Long ago, in the ancient city of Hierapolis, a boy was born into slavery. His name was Epictetus. Unlike other children, his life began in chains, with no freedom or power over his own fate. But this boy would grow up to become one of the greatest philosophers in history, teaching wisdom that still guides people today. This is the story of Epictetus and his philosophy, a way of thinking that can help anyone find inner strength, no matter how difficult life becomes. Epictetus spent his early years serving a wealthy master in Rome. His body was not his own, and every day he faced hardship. But even as a slave, he noticed something important. While his master could control his body, he could not control his mind. Epictetus realized that true freedom was not about physical chains, but about how he chose to think and react. This idea became the foundation of his teachings. One day, his master grew angry and twisted Epictetus' leg as punishment. The pain was terrible, but Epictetus remained calm. He simply said, "If you keep doing that, you will break my leg." His master, furious, twisted harder, until the bones snapped. Epictetus looked at him and said, "I told you it would break." In that moment, he showed that even in suffering he refused to let another person control his mind. Pain was unavoidable, but misery was a choice. When he was freed from slavery, Epictetus began teaching philosophy in Rome. His school was simple, just a small room where students gathered to discuss life, control, and happiness. He did not write books. Instead, his student Arian recorded his words, which we now know as the Edda Discourses and the Enchiridion. These texts are filled with lessons on how to live well, no matter what happens around us. Epictetus taught that the key to a good life is understanding what we can control and what we cannot. He said, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Our thoughts, choices, and actions are within our power. But everything else, other people's opinions, the weather, wealth, sickness, is not. Most suffering comes from trying to control what is not ours to control. If we focus only on what we can change, we find peace." Imagine you are on a ship sailing across the sea. You cannot control the wind or the waves, but you can adjust the sails. Life is the same. We cannot stop storms from coming, but we can choose how to respond. Epictetus said that when something bad happens, we should ask, "Is this within my power?" If not, we must accept it without complaint. Worrying about things we cannot change only makes life harder. Another important lesson from Epictetus is that our problems are not caused by events, but by how we think about them. He told a story of a man who was upset because his neighbor was noisy. The man shouted, "This noise is ruining my peace." But Epictetus asked, "Is it the noise that disturbs you, or your belief that the noise should not exist?" The real problem was not the sound, but the man's expectation that the world must be quiet. If he accepted that noise as part of life, he would not suffer. This idea applies to everything. If someone insults us, we can choose to ignore it. If we lose money, we can focus on what still remains. Epictetus believed that happiness depends on our judgments, not on events. A wise person does not wish for things to be easy, but for the strength to handle anything. Epictetus also warned against placing too much value on external things. Money, fame, and possessions are not bad, but they are unreliable. If we tie our happiness to them, we will always be afraid of losing them. Instead, we should value our character, our honesty, courage, and kindness. These cannot be taken away. One of his most famous sayings is, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." If we learn to be content with little, we will never feel poor. A man who desires nothing is richer than a king who always wants more. But how do we practice this philosophy in daily life? Epictetus gave simple advice. First, we must remind ourselves every morning that today we will face challenges, rude people, delays, disappointments. If we expect these things, they will not surprise us. Second, when something goes wrong, we must pause and ask, can I change this? If yes, we act. If no, we accept. Third, we must train our minds like athletes train their bodies. Every hardship is an exercise in strength. He told his students to imagine life as a banquet. Dishes are passed around, some pleasant, some bitter. Our job is not to complain about the bitter ones, but to take what is given with grace. If we refuse, we only make ourselves miserable. Epictetus did not promise a life without pain, but he promised that we could always choose how to bear it. His own life was proof. Born a slave, crippled by cruelty, exiled by emperors, yet he remained free in his mind. His teachings were not for the powerful, but for ordinary people seeking strength in hard times. 2,000 years later, his words still help. When we face loss, when fear grips us, when the world feels unfair, we can ask, what would Epictetus do? We can remind ourselves that we control our thoughts, that suffering comes from resistance, that true wealth is in needing little. The philosophy of Epictetus is not just ancient wisdom, it is a tool for survival. It teaches us that no matter what happens, we have a choice, to be ruled by the world or to stand firm in our own inner strength. And that is a lesson worth remembering.